We're a month out of Star Wars irritating its way to $1 billion. So far, no one's really liked this film, yet it still made $1 billion, and Disney is treating it like a loss, which just tells you the state we're in. You make over $1 billion, which should cover the film costs and advertising twice over, but it's still a loss. Wow. We're also still seeing the filmmakers trying to defend Rise of the Pretender. In an interview with Variety magazine, J.J. Abrams and Katie McGrath talked about how Abrams and Disney managed to thoroughly fuck up Star Wars. Quote, addressing the importance of representation both on screen and in the office, writer-director J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot co-CEO Katie McGrath discussed at the 2020 Upfront Summit in Los Angeles on Thursday the decision to bring more diversity to the Star Wars franchise and to their company, Bad Robot Productions.
Right, let me show you, baby.
This is Star Wars. It's a story about events that happened a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. These aren't modern human beings. These are aliens. All of your modern politics shouldn't be in these movies. It doesn't fit because this isn't their culture. These are human-looking aliens who hang around other weird-looking aliens, and they think nothing of it. The idea that any of them would be fixated on racial or ethnic differences over species differences makes no sense. Star Wars is supposed to be about excitement and adventure and mythology, not your progressive pussy farts. But McGrath said, quote, in the earliest stages, we talked about if we have this moment, this privilege, what will we want to do with it? Tell a good adventure story that makes people want to come back for more? Delve into the impact on the galaxy after the fall of the Empire? Explore the vast past of the Star Wars mythos, telling stories of the time when Jedi actually charged their swords with the Force? No, that would be a good idea, and y'all ain't interested in that. Y'all only want to preach, and you're gonna claim you don't want to, but then your white liberal guilt will kick in and stop you and make you sound like a hypocrite. Quote, and not from a place of being preachy or feeding people spinach, just from a place of, anytime you have a privilege, you have an obligation, period. That's just how we try to live our lives. Right, so you have one of the most popular franchises in history with characters beloved by billions, and you think your obligation is to your kooky politics, not the billions of fans who made this thing successful. Okay, fine. What does that get us? What wonderful character development do we get from your obligation? Abrams, quote, thought about building this story with the female protagonist, a set of 4 main characters, one of whom was Latinx, one of whom was a Nigerian Londoner, one of whom was a woman, a white woman, and one of whom was a white guy. Oh, for fuck's sake. Where is Nigeria in Star Wars? Find me planet Nigeria. Where is planet Latinx? Show me on the map. Here it is. Show it to me. Find me planet London in Star Wars. Touché. Seriously though, listen to this description again. A set of 4 main characters, one of whom was Latinx, one of whom was a Nigerian Londoner, one of whom was a woman, a white woman, and one of whom was a white guy. First of all, I want to know why you had to emphasize that the woman was white. For progressive, that's sort of out of character, so I wonder what that's about. Second of all, those aren't characters. They're not even archetypes. They're generic descriptions. They don't tell me anything about who these people are, their wants, their desires, their goals, their lives. This has nothing to do with the characters in context of Star Wars. It's all about real-world politics, and if that's what I wanted, I could just watch the news. I'm not going to go see a Star Wars movie to watch a half-assed Benetton ad. Then she says, quote, how can we find a way to have every kid who's going to go see that movie see a version of themselves in a way that isn't often considered at scale?
English, motherfucker, do you speak it?
What are you talking about? It's a story. The kid's supposed to use his imagination. The character shouldn't have to look like the kid in order for the kid to find something of themselves in the character. Jesus Christ. When did people become this shallow? When did we get to the point where if a fictional character isn't exactly like you, you just can't like anything about them? Billions of people identify with Luke Skywalker and less than 1% of them could pass as Mark Hamill. You don't have to look like Luke to identify with them. He's a whiny teenager who feels like he's trapped in his mundane life. That's like literally 90% of teenagers, including wealthy kids who travel the world and get everything they want. There's something about hidden puberty that just turns kids into whiny little bitches. It's so easy to appeal to that group that you have to try to fuck it up. It takes an actual intentional effort to get this wrong. You look at all the popular manga and anime, they're nailing this thing. You look at Kingdom Hearts, nailed it. Look at Avatar: The Last Airbender. Nailed it. So all you need to do to make this work is have a main character who feels like they're trapped in their mundane life or being held back or doesn't realize their true potential, and then have a call to adventure and have them discover their true worth. The more pure you want the character, the more jacked up their life needs to be. If you really want to ratchet it up, you can have them ignore the call to adventure, which ruins what little life they have. That's what Luke did. Or have them make mistakes, like Anakin. It makes the story more interesting. That's all you had to do, and this would work with a male or female character. Instead, you focused on real-world politics and ruined Star Wars. And the article gets to this. Quote, when asked about his approach to storytelling and creating additions to the Star Wars franchise in a polarized world, hold on, what does that have to do with Star Wars? It's fiction. It's a film. You don't have to make it about real-world politics. You just tell your story. It should have nothing to do with modern politics because it's not set in our world. It should have to do with the politics of the Star Wars world. Even then, no one is really watching for the politics. We want to see cool lightsaber battles and dogfights. It's not that hard. But JJ says, quote, as with every project, you do the best you can with everything you have, and that his aim is to make audiences feel good. Well, you failed at that. I mean, this is a thing of special magnificence. You took something beloved by billions, chewed on it, spat it out, sprinkled some salt on it, and tried to call it your own. Then you handed it over to Mr. Bubblehead who wanted to subvert expectations by refrying your cinematic regurgitation and serving it up unused maxi pads. Then you came back, knocked off the maxi pads, and tried to reshape it back into something quasi-edible with one hand while spooging all over it with the other, resulting in no one being happy. Even the actors aren't happy. Honestly.
How do you fuck that up? How do you fuck that up?
I'll tell you how. By focusing on politics over storytelling. McGrath, who is one of the organizers behind Time's Up, one of the splinter movements coming from the Me Too movement, says in the interview, quote, this is about intention and prioritization. So if you're a founder or CEO and your board is one that's all male or especially all white male, don't talk publicly about how much you believe in gender equality or racial equity or anything else. Because if you believe that, if this were a value for you, your board wouldn't look like it does. Look, either you want the best person for the job or you don't. Sometimes all the best people for the job will be white men. Sometimes it'll just be men. Sometimes it'll be all women. Sometimes it'll be mostly black. But it's never supposed to be this. Quote, McGrath instead urged those in the audience to adopt the bad robot rule, i.e. recruiting in proportion to the population. Half the people interviewed should be women, and at least 40% should be people of color, she said. Over half of Bad Robot's leadership team are women, 55% of all employees are women, and nearly half are people of color as a result of this rule, she said. In other words, you're discriminating against men and white people, especially white men. So you're not really inclusive. You're not really diverse. You're a bigot. You're just not targeting the usual groups. And I know McGrath and Abrams would deny this, but let's think this through. In order for this to work, you either have to bring someone in for an interview and then decide against hiring them because of their race, sex, and I'm going to presume sexuality, or you're looking at their resume, see Henry McNeil and go, skip, because that's the only way that's happening. You have to actively discriminate against them because there's no way that 50% of the people seeking jobs in the entertainment industry are women or 40% of them minorities. That's not how job interest plays out. And I'm willing to bet that this practice isn't limited to sex, sexuality, and race. I'm willing to bet that most of the people Bad Robot hires have the same political positions. So all you've created is an echo chamber. So when Abrams, quote, touted the significance of being able to hear points of view different from his own, calling it invaluable, and a way to include other perspectives from the inception of the project, he's not really doing that. He's just hearing his own opinions bounce back at him. I'm sure there might be the random thing he's genuinely never thought of, like what black folks put in their hair to keep it soft, but that's not what he's talking about. What he's talking about is this stupid progressive idea that every group of people, except straight white men, have a unique perspective that is also bizarrely consistent across every member of that group. You may want more black people working at Bad Robot, but you really can just talk to Deshante and only Deshante and you'll know all about being black. And this attitude is what ends up in the films, TV shows, and comics. There's no nuance because these people don't realize it exists. They don't see individuals. They see tokens. That's why they can just go, we need a set of 4 characters. One who's Latinx, one who's a Nigerian Londoner, one who's a woman, a white woman, and one who's a white guy. Nailed it. And you haven't told me a thing about who these people are, what they want, what they desire, their goals, their history, their lives, their beliefs, their interests, or even their personalities. Hell, I don't even know their names. You've given people nothing but a color-coded blank slate.
That is why you fail.
But what do I know? I'm just some guy.